The voicemail was waiting when I landed at JFK after 3 months in the Arctic Circle. "Sweetheart, it's Mom. Listen, we need to talk about your little house situation. Bradley found a developer who's willing to pay cash. Can you believe it? We're moving forward with the sale. You've been sitting on that property long enough, and frankly, it's time you stopped playing scientist and came home to help with the family business. The papers are already drawn up. We'll talk when you get back. Love you." My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone. My house. The 1890s Victorian I'd inherited from my grandmother. The house where I'd spent every summer of my childhood learning about tidal patterns and marine biology from the woman who taught me that the ocean keeps more secrets than any vault. The house that sat on 3 acres of pristine coastline that had been in our family for 4 generations. The house they had absolutely no legal right to sell. I stood there in the terminal, jet-lagged and disoriented, luggage at my feet, still wearing my thermal underlayer beneath my clothes because I'd left Svalbard in sub-zero temperatures just hours ago. Around me, people rushed past, reunions, tears, laughter. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My mother's voice had been so casual, so dismissive. "Your little house situation." As if my career as a marine biologist was a hobby. As if the property my grandmother specifically left to me, and only me, was somehow community family property they could liquidate whenever convenient. Bradley. Of course it was Bradley. My older brother, the golden child, the one who'd taken over Dad's commercial real estate empire and tripled its worth in 5 years. The one who'd been trying to get his hands on grandmother's coastal property since the day she died, insisting it was wasted on me, that I should sell it and invest in his development projects instead. The one I'd said no to, repeatedly, for 6 years. I pulled up my contacts with trembling fingers and called my mother back. It went straight to voicemail. I tried 3 more times. Nothing. I called Bradley. Voicemail. I even tried my father, though he'd stopped returning my calls 2 years ago when I refused to quit my research position and join the family company. Voicemail, voicemail, voicemail. They were avoiding me, which meant they knew exactly what they were doing. I grabbed my bags and ran for the taxi line, my mind racing. I'd been out of cell range for 3 months, living on a research vessel studying Arctic marine ecosystems. 3 months of limited satellite communication, no social media, no phone calls except the weekly check-ins with my research partner. 3 months where my family could have been doing anything to my property, and I wouldn't have known. The taxi ride from JFK to my apartment in Brooklyn took 45 minutes, but it felt like hours. I kept refreshing my email, looking for anything. Legal documents, property records, anything that would tell me what was happening. There was nothing except the usual spam, grant notifications, and departmental memos from the university. My apartment smelled stale when I walked in, dust coating every surface. I didn't care. I threw my bags on the floor, opened my laptop, and started searching property records for Suffolk County. What I found made my blood run cold. A notice of intent to sell filed 4 weeks ago. Signed by Patricia Montgomery, power of attorney for Dr. Vera Montgomery. My mother had forged a power of attorney. She'd forged my signature on legal documents, giving her the authority to sell my property. I sat back in my chair, my mind reeling. This wasn't just family drama. This wasn't just Bradley being pushy about a business opportunity. This was fraud. This was theft. This was my own mother committing a felony to sell my house out from under me, and the sale was scheduled to close in 72 hours. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, reading every document I could find, trying to piece together what they'd done and how far it had gone. The developer was Coastal Elite Properties, a subsidiary of a larger development company that specialized in luxury oceanfront condos. They were offering $2.4 million for the property, far below its actual value, but enough to tempt people who didn't understand what they had. The plans filed with the county showed a 12-unit luxury condo complex, complete with private beach access and a marina. They were going to bulldoze my grandmother's house. They were going to pave over the tidal pools where she'd taught me to identify sea stars by species when I was 7. They were going to destroy the small wetland at the edge of the property where I'd first discovered my passion for marine conservation. and my family was helping them do it for a quick payout. But they'd made one critical mistake, one oversight that was going to cost them everything. My grandmother hadn't just left me a house, she'd left me a conservation easement. 3 years before she died, Grandma Helen had worked with the Nature Conservancy and the federal government to place the entire property under permanent conservation protection. The house could be inherited, lived in, maintained, but it could never be developed, never subdivided, never sold except to another individual who agreed to maintain the conservation restrictions. It was protected in perpetuity, with violations subject to federal penalties. She'd done it specifically to prevent exactly what Bradley and my mother were trying to do now, and she'd made sure I had all the original documentation, filed with both the county and the federal government, stored in a fireproof safe in the house's basement. I grabbed my phone and called the one person who'd always been on my side. Vera? My grandmother's lawyer, Richard Chen, sounded groggy. I'd woken him up. It was 3 a.m. Are you back from the Arctic? Richard, they're trying to sell the house. My mother forged a power of attorney. The sale closes in 3 days. I heard him sit up, suddenly alert. Say that again. I explained everything. The voicemail, the property records, the development plans, the timeline. Jesus Christ, he breathed. Do you have access to the original conservation easement documents? They're in the house, in the safe in the basement. Can you get there? I'm leaving now. Good. Don't let anyone stop you from entering that property. It's legally yours. I'll file an emergency injunction first thing in the morning to halt the sale. But Vera, this is going to get ugly. Your mother committed fraud. Your brother is likely complicit. If we pursue this fully, there will be criminal charges. My jaw tightened. They tried to steal my house, Richard. They can face the consequences. All right. Call me when you have the documents. And Vera, be careful. If they've gone this far, they might not react well to you interfering. I drove out to Montauk as the sun rose, the highway empty and gray in the early morning light. The house was 2 hours from Brooklyn on a good day. This early, with no traffic, I made it in 90 minutes. My grandmother's Victorian sat on a small bluff overlooking the Atlantic, weathered shingles painted pale blue, wrap-around porch facing the water. The garden she'd maintained for 50 years had grown wild in the 6 years since her death. Rosa rugosa spreading across the lawn, beach grass reclaiming the paths, wild grapevines climbing the trellis. It was beautiful. It was home. And there was a lockbox on the front door. My hands clenched around the steering wheel, a realtor's lockbox. They'd already changed the locks. They'd locked me out of my own house. I got out of the car and walked up to the porch, rage building with every step. Taped to the door was a notice. Property under contract, no trespassing, coastal elite properties. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of everything. Then I walked around to the back of the house where I knew the basement window had a broken latch. It had been broken since I was 12, and Grandma had never fixed it because she said it was good to have a secret way in just in case. The window opened easily. I squeezed through, dropping into the familiar musty darkness of the basement. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. My grandmother's old research equipment, boxes of field journals, the ancient washer and dryer, and in the corner, behind a stack of crates marked Christmas decorations, the fireproof safe. I knelt in front of it, my fingers shaking as I spun the combination lock. My grandmother's birthday. My birthday. The day she and my grandfather bought this house. The safe opened. Inside were the documents that were going to save my home. The original deed with my name on it, my grandmother's will, and most importantly, the federal conservation easement, signed and notarized, filed with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Department of the Interior. I pulled them out, photographing every page with my phone before carefully placing them in my backpack. Then I heard it, voices upstairs. I'm telling you, she's not stupid enough to come here. Bradley's voice, arrogant and dismissive as always. She's probably still crying in her apartment. What if she fights the sale? A second voice, unfamiliar, male, nervous. She can't. Mom has power of attorney. By the time Vera figures out what happened, we'll be in escrow, and once the sale closes, there's nothing she can do. She can throw her little tantrum, but the law is on our side. My mother's laugh. Light, unconcerned. Bradley's right. Vera's always been too soft for business. She'll be upset for a while, but she'll get over it. She always does. Besides, $200,000 is a generous finder's fee for doing nothing but inheriting a house. You told her about the finder's fee? Bradley sounded annoyed. Not yet. But she'll be grateful once she understands we're helping her. That property is wasted on her, and the money from this sale will fund your next 3 projects. It's better for everyone. They were standing in my grandmother's living room, dividing up the profits from stealing my house, and my mother genuinely believed she was doing me a favor. I stayed frozen in the basement, barely breathing, listening to them tour the property with who I assumed was the developer. They talked about demolition timelines, foundation requirements, permit expediting. They walked through every room of the house my grandmother had loved, cataloging what could be salvaged for resale and what would be trash. Shame about all this old research equipment, the developer said. Marine biology stuff, worth anything? Doubt it, Bradley replied. Vera's the only one who cares about that garbage. We'll have it hauled away. Garbage. He called my grandmother's life's work garbage. I waited until they left, until I heard car doors slam and engines start, and the sound of tires on gravel fading away. Then I climbed back out the basement window, got in my car, and drove straight to Richard's office. This is even better than I thought, Richard said, spreading the documents across his conference table. The conservation easement isn't just filed locally, it's federally protected. Any attempt to develop this property violates federal law. The sale itself is void because the property can't be used for the purpose the developer intends. Your mother's forged power of attorney is criminal fraud. And Bradley... He looked up at me, his expression grim. If he knew about the conservation easement and proceeded anyway, he's liable for conspiracy to commit fraud and potentially federal charges for attempting to violate protected lands. He knew, I said flatly. My grandmother told everyone about the easement when she filed it. Bradley was furious. He said she was sabotaging the family's financial future. Then he's facing serious legal consequences. Richard pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. Here's what we're going to do. First, I'm filing an emergency restraining order today to halt the sale. Second, I'm notifying the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about the attempted violation. They have enforcement authority and can impose federal penalties. Third, I'm filing a police report for the forged power of attorney. Your mother will likely face fraud charges. My stomach twisted. This was my family, my mother, who'd raised me, who'd come to my high school graduation, who'd called me sweetheart in that voicemail even as she was betraying me. But they'd also dismissed my career as playing scientist. They'd called my grandmother's research garbage. They'd tried to steal the one thing she'd entrusted to me, the one place in the world that was mine. Do it, I said. File everything. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. And if you're already invested in this story, hit that like button and subscribe, because what comes next is going to blow your mind. Trust me, you don't want to miss the moment my family realized exactly what they'd done. The restraining order was granted within hours. The sale was halted immediately, pending investigation. Coastal Elite Properties received notification that the property was under federal conservation protection, and any development plans were impossible. Their entire investment in due diligence and planning was now worthless. And then things moved fast. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service opened an investigation into the attempted violation of the conservation easement. The Suffolk County DA's office opened a criminal investigation into the forged power of attorney. The FBI got involved because of the interstate nature of the fraud. The developer was based in Connecticut, making it a federal case. My phone started ringing within 24 hours. First, Bradley. Vera, what the hell did you do? The feds are at my office. Do you understand what you've done to this family? I hung up. Then my mother crying, Sweetheart, please, this is all a misunderstanding. We were trying to help you. We didn't know about the conservation thing. You knew, Mom. Grandma told everyone. You knew, and you did it anyway. But sweetheart, I'm your mother. You forged my signature on legal documents to steal my house. You're lucky I'm not visiting you in jail. I hung up on her too. My father called next. He didn't yell. He was too smart for that. Vera, we need to talk about this rationally. Bradley made a mistake, yes, but you're about to destroy your own family over a house. Is that really worth it? Dad, she committed fraud. Bradley tried to help her violate federal conservation law. This isn't about the house. This is about them thinking they could steal from me because I'm the scientist, the soft one, the one who doesn't understand business. Well, guess what? I understand property law just fine. If you pursue this, your mother could go to prison. Then she shouldn't have committed fraud. There was a long silence. I didn't raise you to be this cold. No, I said quietly. You raised me to be invisible. To accept whatever Bradley wanted because he's the important one. To be grateful for scraps and never ask for what's actually mine. But Grandma raised me too, Dad, and she taught me to protect what matters. I hung up. The next 2 months were a bureaucratic nightmare. Depositions, court hearings, meetings with federal investigators. I had to take a leave of absence from my research position, which set back my work by half a year. I had to testify about the forged documents, about my grandmother's intentions, about Bradley's knowledge of the conservation easement. My family hired expensive lawyers. They tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that my mother didn't understand what she was signing, that Bradley was just trying to help liquidate an asset I clearly didn't want since I was never there. But the evidence was overwhelming. The forged signature, the emails between Bradley and the developer explicitly discussing the conservation easement and how to work around it. My mother's phone records showing repeated calls to Bradley in the weeks before I left for the Arctic. The developer sued my family for fraud. They'd spent $150,000 on planning and due diligence for a property that could never be developed, and Bradley had assured them there were no encumbrances. Bradley's company faced federal fines for attempting to violate protected lands. His reputation in commercial real estate took a massive hit. Who would work with a developer who didn't do basic title research? And my mother was charged with felony fraud and forgery. The day before her court hearing, she called me one last time. Vera, please, I'm begging you. I could go to prison for 5 years. I made a mistake, but I'm still your mother. Please don't let this happen. I sat in my grandmother's kitchen. I'd moved back into the house after the restraining order, looking out at the ocean. The late afternoon sun turned the water gold and pink, and I could see the tidal pools where Grandma had taught me everything that mattered. Mom, I said carefully, do you even understand what you did wrong? I forged some documents. I know that was wrong, but I was trying to help the family. No, that's not it. I took a deep breath. You decided my life's work doesn't matter. You decided my grandmother's legacy doesn't matter. You decided that my house, my inheritance, my career, my choices, none of it matters compared to Bradley's business deals. You've spent my entire life telling me I'm not as important as him, that my dreams are nice but not serious, that I should be grateful you even pay attention to me. And when you had the chance to steal from me, you did, because you genuinely believed I wouldn't fight back. You thought I was too soft, too weak, too devoted to my little science projects to understand property law or defend myself. That's not, I never said, you said it in your voicemail, Mom. Stop playing scientist. Those were your words. As if my PhD doesn't count. As if my research doesn't matter. As if everything I've built is a child's game compared to Bradley's real estate empire. She was crying now. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. And the saddest part is, you still don't get it. You're not sorry you tried to steal my house. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there are consequences. But you're not sorry for what you actually did to me. Vera, please. I'm not dropping the charges, Mom. You committed a crime. You face the consequences. That's how this works. I hung up for the last time. The plea deal came through 3 weeks later. My mother pleaded guilty to forgery and fraud in exchange for 2 years probation, 500 hours community service, and restitution for all legal fees. No jail time, but a felony conviction on her record. Bradley's company paid $200,000 in federal fines and was banned from bidding on any projects involving protected federal lands for 10 years. The professional hit to his reputation cost him 3 major contracts worth millions. The developer sued both of them for damages. That case was still ongoing last I heard. And me? I got my house back. Completely, legally, permanently mine. But I got something else too. The story made news. Not major headlines, but enough that people in conservation circles heard about it. A family trying to illegally develop federally protected coastal land, stopped by the granddaughter who'd inherited it. A marine biologist protecting her grandmother's legacy. I got emails, a lot of emails. One was from Dr. Patricia Okonjo at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. She'd read about my case and looked up my research on Arctic marine ecosystems. She wanted to know if I'd be interested in a position leading a new coastal conservation initiative, using my grandmother's property as a research station. Another was from the Nature Conservancy, offering a grant to restore the house and upgrade it for marine research, in exchange for allowing graduate students to use it for field studies. A third was from a documentary filmmaker who wanted to make a film about multi-generational conservation work, featuring my grandmother's research and mine. Within 6 months, my little house had become the Montauk Marine Research Station, a working conservation facility hosting researchers from 5 universities. The tidal pools my grandmother had loved were now officially protected research sites. The wetland at the edge of the property was restored and registered as critical habitat for endangered species. I published a paper on intergenerational conservation knowledge, using my grandmother's 50 years of field journals and my own research. It got picked up by National Geographic. And I finally finished my Arctic research project, publishing findings that contributed to new protections for polar marine ecosystems. My career didn't just survive my family's betrayal. It thrived. I haven't spoken to Bradley in 2 years. He sends emails occasionally, usually when he wants something. Access to the property for a potential business partner who's very interested in conservation. Offers to help manage the research station. Suggestions for how I could monetize the property more effectively. I delete them without responding. My mother sends cards on holidays. Apology cards, mostly, though they never actually say what she's apologizing for. Just vague regrets about how things turned out and hopes that someday we can be a family again. I keep them in a drawer. I don't respond to those either. My father called once, about a year ago. "Your mother's in therapy," he said. "She's working on understanding what she did. She wants to make amends." "That's good," I said. "I hope she finds peace with it." "Does that mean you'll talk to her?" "No, Dad. It means I hope she finds peace with the fact that I won't." He sighed. "You've become very hard, Vera." "No," I corrected gently. "I've become very clear about what I will and won't accept. There's a difference." If you're still watching, drop a comment below and tell me. Have you ever had family betray you like this? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? I read every comment, and I'd love to hear your stories. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button. I share more stories about standing up to injustice, and trust me, you'll want to hear what else I've learned about dealing with people who underestimate you. Last summer, I hired 3 graduate students to help with the Coastal Research Program. One of them, Maya, reminded me so much of myself at her age. Brilliant, passionate about marine conservation. Completely overlooked by her family who didn't understand why she wouldn't go into business or medicine or law like her siblings. We were out in the tidal pools one evening, collecting data on sea star populations, when she asked me about the house. "I heard the story," she said carefully, "about your family trying to sell it, about you fighting them in court. Do you ever regret it? Going that hard against your own mother and brother?" I watched the tide coming in, the same rhythm my grandmother had watched for 50 years, the same rhythm I'd watched my whole life. "I regret that it was necessary," I said finally. "I regret that my family valued money more than trust. I regret that my mother thought so little of me that she believed she could forge my signature and I'd never fight back. But do I regret protecting this place? Protecting my grandmother's legacy and my own future? No, never." "My family thinks I'm wasting my potential," Maya said quietly. "They think marine biology is a hobby. They want me to quit and go to business school." "Are you going to?" "No." She looked at me, her eyes fierce. "Because if you can stand up to your family trying to literally steal your house, I can stand up to mine just being disappointed in my career choices." I smiled. "That's exactly right. And Maya, you're not wasting your potential. You're using it exactly the way you should. Don't let anyone tell you different." 3 years after that voicemail, I sat on my grandmother's porch watching the sunset, a glass of wine in my hand, and a stack of grant applications on the table beside me. The research station was thriving. My career was thriving. I'd just been invited to speak at the International Marine Conservation Conference about protecting coastal ecosystems. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Thought you'd want to know. Bradley's company just filed for bankruptcy. The lawsuits and fines caught up with him. Your mother is selling the family house to help cover his legal debts." I stared at that message for a long time. There was a part of me that wanted to feel vindicated, to feel like karma had come around, like justice had been served. They'd tried to take my house, and now they were losing theirs. But mostly, I just felt sad. Sad that my brother's arrogance had destroyed the company my father built. Sad that my mother had sacrificed her freedom and reputation for a son who'd led her into committing crimes. Sad that an entire family had imploded because they valued money more than relationships, business more than integrity, winning more than honesty. I could have helped them. If they'd treated me like family instead of an asset to exploit, I could have helped. My research grants, my conservation connections, my growing reputation in marine biology. I had resources and knowledge and contacts they couldn't buy. But they'd never once asked for my help. They'd only ever tried to take what was mine. I picked up my wine glass and turned back to the ocean. My grandmother used to say that the tide always comes back. That you can't fight the ocean, you can only learn its rhythms and work with them. She'd built her whole life around that philosophy, studying the patterns, respecting the power, protecting the ecosystems she loved. She'd protected this place. And now I was protecting it too, not just from development, but for something better, for research, for education. For the next generation of scientists who needed to know that conservation matters, that standing up to powerful people is possible, that soft doesn't mean weak. My phone buzzed again. An email from Maya. "Dr. Montgomery, preliminary results on the sea star count are incredible. We've documented 3 species we didn't expect to find this far south. This place is even more important than we thought." I smiled and started typing a response. The tide was coming in. The research was thriving, and I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. My family had tried to sell my house while I was away studying the Arctic. Instead, they'd lost everything, and I'd built something my grandmother would have been proud of. Some houses aren't meant to be sold. Some legacies aren't meant to be cashed in. Some battles are worth fighting, even when the people who should love you tell you to surrender. And some women are done being underestimated. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below, telling me what you would have done in my situation. Would you have pressed charges against your own mother, or would you have found another way? I love hearing your perspectives. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, someone who's struggling with family who doesn't respect them, share this video. Sometimes people need to know they're not alone in choosing themselves over keeping the peace. I'll see you in the next one.